the costumes, the hair. There's only one ABBA. And after decades of going their own way, the Swedish supergroup is back.
At 78, Benny Andersson finally shares the real story behind ABBA. It's more than music and fame. It's about the pain, the escape, and the personal struggles that shaped their iconic sound. For decades, fans have danced to the sparkling rhythms and unforgettable melodies, but beneath the glittering surface was a man quietly fighting his own battles. Benny reveals the hidden truths we've long sensed, but never truly heard before. Now, for the first time, he reveals the hidden feelings and experiences behind one of the world's most iconic bands. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel StarVault TV, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Before ABBA became the global music machine that it is now, Benny Andersson was merely a boy enchanted with melodies, not with fame. Raised in Sweden, he was exposed to folk songs, classical music, and the rhythms of the accordion at family gatherings. Church harmonies seeped into his subconscious, providing him with a natural ear for structure and emotion well before he ever laid hands on a synthesizer. Whereas the world would eventually harmonize along with Dancing Queen, Benny's earliest musical inspirations were found in traditional Scandinavian music. These roots provided him with a consistent musical anchor, a sense of timelessness, even as ABBA pursued disco lights and global stardom. His songs weren't influenced by fleeting trends. It came from deeper within, wrapped in history and authenticity. When Benny started collaborating with Björn Ulvaeus, their collaboration created something unusual in the music world: equilibrium. Benny was the chiseler of chords, melodies, and emotional facades, and Björn wrote lyrics and storytelling. They constructed songs together that were effortless on the surface, but had enormous emotional depth. What appeared to be mere pop anthems were, in reality, geniuses crafted with precision. Benny didn't compose music, he chiseled out emotional topography. In the studio, he was dogged. Days could be spent fine-tuning one harmony, pursuing not a sound but a feeling. He'd repeat sections over and over, not for clinical perfection, but for naked honesty. Every track was a message, even if listeners didn't always get its full intent. While Agnetha Faltskog and Annie Frid Lyngstad Frida blazed in the limelight, Benny tended to stand quietly behind them. He once confessed that he never felt noticed in ABBA, not as a star, but as an artist. Fans screamed for the vocalists, but few knew that the man scripting every string section, every echo, was the pulse of the band. Behind the glass of the control room, Benny bore tremendous weight. He wasn't the frontman of ABBA, but he was always at center. He was the fixer, too, the one who would keep the band together when things got hot. He handled not only the music, but the feelings behind it, ironing out disagreements in a band that was always stretched to the limit. That job ground him down slowly. Being the group's glue was an unspoken load he hardly ever owned. Most fans don't know how much Benny contributed to ABBA's sound. Without Benny, the songs would have been bright, but empty. His chord progressions provided the shadows underneath the sunshine, incorporating sadness into happy melodies. Even the happiest ABBA hits had a melancholy undertone to them, and that was Benny's contribution. He gave the music substance without insisting on credit. He was also not afraid of technology. Whereas other groups played it safe, Benny adopted early synthesizers, multi-track layering, and studio tricks. He composed soundscapes that were cinematic in ambition, rendering ABBA's discography ageless. Silence itself was one of his instruments. Benny understood when to recess, when to allow a melody to breathe. That restraint gave the songs more humanity, establishing trust with listeners who were led through peaks and troughs. In subsequent interviews, Benny confessed a deep truth. He employed music to sift through emotions that he could not articulate in life. While his bandmates tended to tackle emotions head-on, Benny hid behind melodies. For him, the piano was a voice, one that enabled him to speak the unutterable. This alters the way we perceive ABBA's music. Beneath the veneer of perfection lay a man who was not aloof because he did not care. He was aloof because music was safer than exposure. Each of his songs was a creation and an escape, a means by which he kept himself together as life tore him apart. In retrospect, Benny admits he didn't pursue fame. He pursued the sense of a flawless note, the crisp finish of a chord. Even while ABBA took over the world, he repeatedly felt like a stranger within machine. Booze did not quite make up for it, but the music did. Benny's private life was also defined by music. His romance with Frida started in the studio, not candlelight and roses. Late nights at work dissolved boundaries between collaboration and closeness, and before long, melodies held meanings that words could not express. Their relationship was founded on acknowledgement and comfort in sound. But their differences soon emerged. Frida was passionate, emotionally expressive, and hot-tempered. Benny was introverted, expressing emotions in music, not words. What sustained their music threatened to destroy their relationship. Their relationship was anchored in unhealed trauma. Frida, having experienced abandonment early in life, ached for emotional presence. Benny, conditioned from an early age to bottle things in, used silence and chords rather than words. They communicated with each other through lyrics, and rather than healing, it made them further apart. Those songs, The Winner Takes It All and One of Us, were not merely pop ballads but disguised confessions. Benny confessed later that he wrote such songs not to end agony, but to spare himself the direct encounter. Frida lived each lyric she performed, bearing the burden of heartache in her voice. The disparity between Benny's emotional detachment and Frida's brutal vulnerability finally shattered their foundation. He later admitted, "I gave my best lines to songs, not to the people who needed to hear them." That chilling confession recontextualizes their story. Benny wasn't mean, he was scared. Scared of being openly himself, scared of being vulnerable. Music was his armor, but it came at the expense of intimacy. The fans would always conjecture about rivalry between Agnetha and Frida, but the actual silent battle was Benny's. He was not fighting his band members, he was fighting perception. The world loved the women of ABBA, their beauty, their voices, their fashion sense. Meanwhile, Benny and Bjorn were relegated to the men behind the music, their faces routinely overlooked behind the brand. Whatever number of hits they had written, Benny became invisible. He wasn't resentful of the women. Instead, he was offended by how easily his role was washed away. Critics wrote off ABBA as catchy pop fluff, but Benny's music was anything but superficial. He invested pain, yearning, and discipline into every note. Being defined as the cold brain behind ABBA hurt him severely. He was not mechanical, he was expressive, but the world didn't notice. As the years passed, he ceased to struggle for acknowledgement. He moved on to new works, musicals, film scores, orchestras, places where he had complete creative freedom. And yet, still he felt frustrated. He had crafted feelings that reached millions, but his own reputation hung precarious, half-concealed under the sheen of renown. By the late 70s, however, ABBA's success was unstoppable, yet behind the glitz, burnout ensued. Traveling wore them down. The music became less about passion and more about duty. Benny remembers finding that the spark had gone out, that the songs no longer felt genuine. ABBA's demise wasn't cataclysmic, it was gradual. They never gathered for an ultimatum talk. No great farewell, just the stillness of silence. Frida bounced on, shutting out her emotions even before the band officially disintegrated. Benny agonized for decades. He now refers to the end as a creative death. It wasn't scandal that killed ABBA, it was exhaustion and emotional stagnation. The public wanted drama, but what actually happened was less complicated and tragic. The music had played itself out. After ABBA, Benny stepped away from the limelight. He submerged himself in theater, orchestras, and film scores, music unencumbered by tabloids, adoration, and shattered relationships. Plays such as Chess and Christina Fran, De Vemela, became not only art, but also therapy. In the 90s, Benny even wrote a journal full of unwritten letters to his old bandmates, letters brimming with guilt, frustration, and forbidden love. These pages enabled him to work through feelings he had long suppressed. With age came freedom. He no longer pursued stardom. He composed for himself, not for the charts. He started teaching young composers, imparting not only technique but the value of emotional truth, something he confesses he did not fully practice during ABBA's peak. Today, at 78, Benny has reduced ABBA's tale to one singular affirmation. ABBA worked because we were broken. The music made us feel whole. This reality recontextualizes the band's whole history. ABBA was not a fairy tale, but survival, for vulnerable individuals held together by song. Their songs were not constructed on imperfection, but on hurt and the desperate desire to escape. Benny confesses the stage smiles were genuine, but they were also disguises. Behind the glitz were individuals trying to cope with heartbreak, isolation, and the weight of expectation. Their songs were not entertainment, but lifelines. And that is the real legacy of ABBA, music born of vulnerability, but resilient enough to sustain generations. Nowadays, Benny Andersson is no longer racing for applause. He is racing for truth. In telling his tale, he doesn't demolish ABBA's mythology, he enriches it. He reminds us that the group wasn't infallible, but profoundly human. ABBA didn't collapse due to fame or scandal. It collapsed because the individuals within it were too human, too exposed, too real. The music was their therapy, their armor, their salvation. But ultimately, even music could not rescue them from themselves. What is left behind, though, is eternal. ABBA's music remains, bearing within it the whispers of Benny's silent struggles, his buried feelings, and his unspoken truth. For the first time ever, we are finally hearing the complete tale, not only the harmony but the humanity that lies behind it.